Good evening, everyone. We will be starting shortly.
Board to the fourth MTA toll hearing, not tolls, fare hearing. My general counsel always corrects me. The MTA fare hearing, and we're going to start off by hearing the usual safety announcement for those in the building.
Your safety is of the foremost importance to the MTA. Therefore, we ask that you listen and adhere to the following instructions. If you witness an emergency, notify emergency personnel in the room and call 911 immediately. Please follow any audible instructions provided through the public address system or visually on screens in the event of an emergency. If an alarm sounds, wait for a public address announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell A just across the main hallway or stairwell B down the hallway past the elevators. If you have a mobility disability or cannot self-evacuate, please proceed to stairwell D or E for assistance by MTA staff or emergency personnel. An automated external defibrillator, AED, for use by trained personnel is in the main hallway just past the elevators. If you need assistance during an evacuation, please tell an MTA staff member or emergency personnel. Thank you and have a safe day.
Okay. Well, before we do logistics, I just want to acknowledge MTA board members who have joined this meeting in person: David Jones, Neil Zuckerman, Sammy Chu, Sharif Solomon, Elizabeth Velez. I think Lisa Soren is here as well. And we have on the remote, participating remotely, Blanca Lopez and Randy Glucksman as well from our board. So thank you to the board members who have joined, as board members have. Jerry Bringerman, thank you for being here, a member of our board as well. Yeah, I looked at the wrong side of the table. Thank you. All right, with that, Danny, would you lay out the logistics for members of the public, please?
Absolutely, Chairman Lieber. Good evening, everyone. My name is Danny Randell from the MTA. I will serve as this evening's hearing officer for this public hearing, the last of 4 public hybrid hearings, to provide the public with the opportunity to comment on the proposed changes to MTA fares affecting transportation on the subways, buses, commuter rails, the Staten Island Railway, and Access-a-Ride. Today's public hearing will begin with a brief presentation, followed by public comments from speakers in the room and remote via Zoom. As a reminder, only those who registered to speak will be able to give public comments. To make the public aware of these hearings, advertisements were published in 21 print media outlets, including multilingual outlets throughout the region. The MTA also provided notice of the hearings in multiple press releases, on the MTA website, on social media, and on multilingual signs and digital displays in stations, buses, and trains. The MTA's Fair Hearing website, new.mta.info/2023-fair-hearings, describes these proposals in detail. By participating in this hybrid hearing, you're consenting to be recorded. We encourage anyone joining via Zoom or live stream to take a short survey using the QR code or link currently being displayed. This survey helps us understand the effectiveness of our outreach. The link to the survey can also be found in the Q&A section of the Zoom. This hearing is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on the fare change proposals contained in the hearing notice. Members of the MTA Board of Directors, agency presidents, and senior staff are here today to hear comments from the public. MTA subject matter experts will be available to answer your questions about fare change proposals, both in the room and in the Zoom Q&A function. The Q&A function is available only if you are logged into the Zoom webinar online, and it is located on the lower portion of your Zoom window. If you are attending via Zoom online, type your question into the Q&A function. Subject matter experts may answer your question if it is deemed to pertain to the subject of this hearing. If you are in person, you'll recognize our staff members by their name tags. Members of the public can also provide comments, ask questions, or make requests on the Fares Hearing website, new.mta.info/2023-fair-hearings. You may also send a letter to MTA Government and Community Relations regarding MTA Fair Hearings, addressed to 2 Broadway, 17th floor, New York, New York, 10004. Or you can call the public hearing hotline at 646-252-6777. Telephone agents are available from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. I should emphasize that all public comments, including spoken comments today and at other hearings, all correspondence, emails, and phone calls, will be transcribed and incorporated into the official record regarding the proposed fare changes and provided to all the board members so that they can review them prior to final consideration of the fare change proposals. For today's record, today is Monday, June 26, 2023, and the time is 6:12 p.m. Now let me briefly describe the procedure for today's hearing. I will call the names of people who have registered to speak in the order in which they are registered. The one exception here is that if those who have already spoken at a public hearing during this round of hearings will be moved to the end of the queue to give registrants who have not spoken at a previous hybrid public hearing the opportunity to speak first. We opened registration for today's hearing on Friday, June 2nd, 2023, and registration closed at 6 p.m. this evening. All participants will be muted upon joining the Zoom webinar. When your name is called, please enable your camera and microphone by clicking the camera and microphone icons on the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please note there will be a brief transition to allow you to access your video and microphone. We will give you 10 seconds to turn on your camera and microphone before moving on to the next speaker. In the event your name is called and you are not present, we will read your name again at the end of the hearing in the order it was initially called. When you begin your comments, please provide us your name and any affiliation you wish to announce so that we have it for the record. Speakers must keep their remarks to 2 minutes or less out of respect for all other speakers. The clock on the screen will indicate how much time you have remaining, and visual and auditory cues will remind you that you have 30 seconds left to conclude your remarks. If you run out of time, remember, you can always submit complete written testimony to supplement your oral testimony. American Sign Language and cart captioning are available at this hearing. The public notice for this hearing indicated that language translation services are available, but no request for those services was received by the deadline specified in the notice. To access captioning at the bottom of the screen, select CC, and you will be able to turn on or enlarge the captions based on your preference. You can also view the entire transcript for context if needed. Users will not need to adjust their screens to see ASL. As a reminder, this hearing is being live casted and recorded and will be available publicly on our YouTube channel and our website. Again, by participating in this hybrid hearing, you are consented to being recorded. Thank you for listening. And the chairman introduced our MTA board members, and I will introduce the senior executive staff who are here with us today. From MTA leadership, we have Jano Lieber, Shanifa Riera, Paige Graves, and Catherine Rinaldi. And then I will turn it over to John McCarthy, MTA's Chief of External Relations, and Jai Patel, MTA's Deputy CFO, for a brief presentation.
Thank you, Danny. Good evening. We're going to do a quick presentation, as Danny said, on the roles of fares in our budget process, and we'll go into the proposals that we're putting forward today and highlight some of the promotions and the various pilots. First, I just want to go back to December 2022. This board adopted a budget as required by law, and it assumed a 5.5 increase in fare revenues would be necessary to balance the budget and avert a looming fiscal cliff. Earlier this year, in the fiscal year 2024 state budget was passed, and it provided funding to maintain service and even increase subway frequency despite lower fare revenue. Thanks to Governor Hochul and the state legislature, the budget agreement reached last month also included an additional $65 million to avert the higher than predicted fare increase. That means we were able to bring down this 2023 fare increase from 5.5 increase down to a 4% increase in revenue. The budget deal did require the MTA to increase operating efficiencies. We'll go into that a little shortly, and return to the practice of biennial fare increases. Now I'll turn it over to Jay to go through our budget.
Sure. Thank you, John. A quick overview of the sources of MTA revenue and how it's spent. Farebox revenue represents about 27% of our total revenue. That's down from almost 40% pre-pandemic levels. Fare revenue is critical, but it only covers a portion of our operating costs. Operating costs include salary and health benefits, which account for 60% of costs, and other non-labor costs such as fuel and power. Transportation revenue bonds also support the system's much-needed capital investments and improvements. These costs increase over time, and modest recurring fare increases help offset a portion of these costs.
I'd like to turn your attention to the screen, which shows the pattern of our fare increases over the years. You can see what happens when we go for over 10 years without an increase. As you can see, between 1990 and 2003, Customers are then hit with a massive increase to make up for that shortfall. What we've been doing since 2010 is having regular, predictable fare increases that keep track with inflation. We went away from that for a couple of years during COVID, and what this budget deal in the state does is it returns us to those regular fare increases that you'll see in 23 that we're discussing today. Over the last few sessions that we've had, we've heard from the public, and a couple of items that regularly come up we want to cover quickly, and it's how we're working with the city and the state to keep our fares affordable. First, we're working to keep our expenses in check through aggressive cost cutting. As mentioned, the state budget included it included the MTA saving $100 million this year through operating efficiencies. It also includes $400 million reoccurring in the out years on operating efficiencies, and we'll continue to work on those as the year goes through. The second thing that's come up regularly is what we're doing about fare and toll evasion. We recently received a report from a panel put together by Chair Lieber that discussed ways we could improve our approach to fare evasion and preventing it, specifically the redesign of the fare areas and different approaches to how we enforce fare evasion. We encourage people to look at that report, and we will be coming back to the public with the steps we've taken in the months after that report came out. The third thing we're doing is meeting the needs of low-income customers through our Fair Fares program that we work with the city on. This allows customers, low-income customers, to have access to half fare. It's very important for the public who are eligible to understand the eligibility and make sure that they apply and receive that benefit.
So I wanted to go over our approach for the 2023 fare increase. In December, we started working with several board members, many of whom are with us today at the table and online, to develop a fare package which focused on three main priorities: increasing the fare to help balance the 23 budget and future years, allocating the increases with an eye towards equity, and looking at customer behavior to responsibly prioritize our most frequent customers. The result of those meetings is how we came up with our 4% increase and how it applies across the board to our various fare products. Now I'll walk you through some of the examples of our permanent fare increase. The proposals vary by ticket type, but also yield a 4% revenue for us. Some quick highlights: the base fare for subways and buses is proposed to increase by 15 cents, the 7-day by $1, and the 30-day pass by $5. On the railroad side, weekly and monthly proposal is to increase it up to 4.5%. So when we discuss permanent fare changes, it also gives us an opportunity to discuss pilots and promotions. And this is sort of where we want to expand and look at different things and build upon our legacy products that we offer to look at sort of our capacity and delivering equity. With some of those goals in mind, we're introducing some new pilots this round. We're offering customers a 7-day rolling fare cap on Omni versus the static Monday through Sunday. So customers can start using a Omni, and their fare capping will begin on the day of their first usage rather than the set Monday period. Expanding city ticket to weekday peak for $7 and continuing the off-peak ticket for $5. We're also launching a new fare Rockaway ticket, and then we'll continue to maintain our deep discounts on the monthly tickets for the railroads. This helps sort of customers provide rail access with fare products that are reasonable to get into the city that subway customers currently enjoy. That ends our presentation, and I'm going to turn it back over to Danny to start the hearing process.
Thank you, John and Jai. We will now move to the public comment portion of today's public hearing. I will call our first speaker of the night, When your name is called, if you are participating via Zoom, there will be a brief transition to allow you to turn on your camera and unmute your camera and microphone. Our first speaker this evening is Senator James Skoufis, followed by Assemblymember Bobby Carroll over Zoom.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks for allowing for the opportunity to participate by Zoom. I just stepped away from a Disney animated film with my toddler to join you tonight. I appreciate the opportunity. Look, I'll try and be brief here. Chair Lieber, you and your administration, I really am grateful to you all for, as long as I've been involved, paying more attention to west of Hudson needs and service than I've seen at any time from the MTA, so I thank you. As you know, however, there continues to be a substantial value gap. For every dollar we put into the system in Orange and Rockland counties, we receive far less than a dollar of service. Meaningful steps have been taken to close that value gap, but that value gap still remains and is substantial. Certainly during the budget process, the acknowledgement was made to carve out from the payroll mobility tax increase, not only west of Hudson, but all of the non-New York City MTA counties. This is the next opportunity to, I believe, continue to close that gap, and that is to waive this increase for Orange and Rockland riders, trying to rebuild ridership west of Hudson. The gap still remains, and to keep our fares flat, just as you all did the last time there was consideration for a fare increase, I think would be, I know would be a very meaningful step, an additional step in the right direction towards acknowledging the gap that exists. And again, I think rebuilding the faith and the trust and hopefully the ridership in Orange and Rockland counties that we're all collectively trying to rebuild. So I thank you for the time and the opportunity, and certainly look forward to continued partnership.
Thank you, Senator, for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Assemblymember Bobby Carroll over Zoom, followed by Juliet Lindsay in person.
Good evening, and thank you so much for allowing me to testify over Zoom. And first, I would like to commend the entire MTA board and all the workers of the MTA, especially our subway and bus drivers and conductors, for the amazing job that all of you have done during these very trying times. But I testify today to urge you to hold off from increasing the fare on subway and bus riders in New York City. I understand the constraints and the issues around the operating budget of the MTA, but until we recover our ridership, I think it is not prudent to increase the fare, especially when we are about to implement a first-in-the-nation congestion pricing program that I think will change the dynamics and drive so many more New Yorkers onto subways and buses. And further, I think we have an opportunity. The legislature failed the MTA this year by only implementing a payroll mobility tax on New York City businesses when it should have done it regionally, so that we have a truly regional transportation network that is paid by all of our businesses. If we are able to do that and then increase ridership, then I could understand increasing the fare at a commensurate rate as previous fare increases. Finally, I would like to mention the Access-a-Ride on-demand pilot program. I am excited to see it expand, but I do want to note that there are so many of my constituents who this program has been life-changing, who otherwise would not be able to go to appointments, go to work, or meet friends and family members. And I hope that this board understands that the increase from $2.75 to $5 and the capping of rides over the month could cause mass disruption, especially for those neediest New Yorkers. And I hope there is real care taken. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Assemblymember, for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Juliet Lindsay, followed by Jess King.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak. My main concern is that I'm a senior, and there's no AM peak senior discount for inbound trains. And, I'm urging you to try to change that policy for a number of reasons. I mean, I'm part of the baby boomer generation where there is a big influx of seniors who have to work longer because of rising cost. And I don't understand. I wrote an email and I got a response, and they were saying it was tax supported, and it's an agreement between New York and Connecticut, and because of the increased operating costs for AM peak trains. But I just don't understand how you're saving any money by not having this discount for seniors. So I just hope that, if you have to make an agreement with Connecticut, if it can be done, because I plan to work. It doesn't matter how long I plan to work. I want to work as long as I want to, but I also am working because I have to, and it is a cost. I'm taking Metro North because it eliminates 2 buses and a train in an hour of my commute going inbound. Outbound, going home, I do take the subway and a bus because it doesn't matter what time I get home, but it does matter what time I get to work. So, I'm just hoping that there's some consideration for a senior discount. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Jess King, followed by Malik James over Zoom.
Good evening, everybody. I'm glad I had the chance to speak here today. I'm very nervous speaking in front of such a large crowd and live stream, so I'm going to try my very best to just get through it without stuttering or anything. Well, my main concern is, I understand the fares had to be raised because ridership hasn't yet reached pre-pandemic levels and may never again, among other factors of which I forgot. Have any of you considered lowering the fares by at least 10%, expanding reduced fare options to senior citizens, more senior citizens, and or expanding the free buses pilot program that's currently being tested out to other routes that have high ridership, such as the B41 along Flatbush and Brooklyn?
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Malik James over Zoom, followed by Michael Stanton over Zoom.
All right, good evening. My name is Malik James. I'm the Executive Director of the New York City Council's Black, Latino, and Asian Caucus. I'm speaking tonight to express my opposition to the MTA's proposed fare increases for New York City Transit and the proposed elimination of the Atlantic Ticket Program. Millions of people use the New York City Transit network daily. The proposal to increase the fare from $275 to $290 will disproportionately impact low-income Black, Latino, and Asian individuals in transit deserts. Per a 2016 report, 1 in 4 low-income working-age New Yorkers stated they could not afford subway or bus fares. 1 in 3 stated they did not take jobs further away or even look for them due to MetroCard costs. Increasing fares will exacerbate these problems and make the MetroCard less accessible to a larger group of people. Furthermore, the current fares program is inadequate in offsetting the impacts of this fare increase. Currently, fewer than 300,000 residents receive benefits from the program out of the nearly 1 million eligible for it. New York City already has one of the most expensive public transit systems in the nation, and a fare increase will not serve our communities, but instead place a greater undue burden on us all. In addition, sunsetting the Atlantic Ticket program in favor of the City Ticket will not serve the interests of Southeast Queens residents. The City Ticket does not foster interagency collaboration like the Atlantic Ticket does. It does not offer a weekly ticket option, with which customers are also given a 7-day unlimited Metro card. The city ticket is only offered on off-peak trains, unlike the Atlantic ticket available for off-peak and peak trains. The proposed peak hour city ticket, slated for release later this year, will be $2 more expensive than the Atlantic ticket's one-way option, costing $7. Furthermore, even with the Atlantic ticket offered only via physical vending machines at eligible stations in Brooklyn and Queens, it's been markedly successful. Between February and May 2022, there was a 10% increase for single tickets, resulting in 14,000 one-way tickets sold, and an increase of weekly passes sold to 723 tickets. A large number of Black, Latino, and Asian New Yorkers rely on the Atlantic ticket program. Eliminating it would prove detrimental for economic recovery. Proving these proposals would be harmful to New
Please
Yorkers.
conclude your remarks.
You on them. Thank you.
Danny, I just want to remind folks in the room that staff is available to answer questions in the room and over the Zoom function, so please don't hesitate to ask them. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Our next speaker will be Michael Stanton over Zoom, followed by Betsy Lindor in the room.
Good evening. My name is Mike Stanton. I live in White Plains, and I'm a regular rider on the Harlem Line and the subway. I am speaking tonight on behalf of the Metro North Railroad Commuter Council. No one likes a fare hike, but we recognize that supporting the system with reasonable, planned increases is critical to keeping it in good financial health and for maintaining the reliable service that is crucially important to riders. Adding more creative and flexible fare offerings will help encourage ridership around the system while reducing the financial burden of a fare increase. We support capping the cost of monthly ticket fares for commuters living the farthest from New York City at $500. We support the 4.5% increase on weekly and monthly tickets that would still be at a lower cost than pre-pandemic because of the 10% discount implemented last year. We support capping any ticket increase greater than 6% at a maximum increase of 50 cents per trip. And we support standardizing the off-peak discount across Metro North and the Long Island Railroad. We also support rolling Atlantic ticket into City Ticket, but the newly expanded City Ticket must include the option to purchase a weekly ticket that allows transfer to and from subways and buses. Removing the weekly takes away opportunity from people who need it most. Instead, it should be expanded so that Metro North riders within the city have access to this service as well. Without the transformative investment in transit passed in this year's state budget, we would be looking at far greater fare hikes and potential service cuts. We appreciate that Governor Hochul and the state legislature acted to reduce the planned biannual fare increase. Investing in transit means investing in millions of riders around the region who depend on trains and buses every day. Better transit means access to more employment, education, and recreational activities. Discounts to incentivize frequent ridership are key to getting this right, as is improving service on Metro North and around the MTA system. Thank you for the opportunity to comment and for considering our input.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Betsy Lindor, followed by Councilmember Sylvina Brooks Powers over Zoom.
I stand here? Hi, okay. Okay, I never. Hello, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Betsy Lindor, and I am a resident of the Bronx. And I appreciate the opportunity of being able to be here in person and comment about the proposed fare hike that is going to be proposed around Labor Day. So let me get to my speech. So my comments concerning the fare hike is that how I feel about it isn't fair. The majority of New Yorkers who depend on public transportation, as myself, get around New York City are struggling in all avenues of life, you know. As an individual, like I said, as myself, who depend on public transportation, raising the fares to me means more financial stress and adding on to a lot of people's lives outside of, you know, people in the room and people who are watching at home, and just everyone who depend on public transportation, MTA in general. Pretty much everything in society is raising in cost, just like, you know, AKA inflation, like housing, food, education. So adding $2.90 to the fare is just personally just a lot, and everything else pertaining to weekly Metro cards, monthly Metro cards, Metro North, so on and so forth. So throughout the years of taking the subway, I've seen people begging for swipes or asking station clerks permission to enter the turnstile just to make it, you know? So overall, it will all fall on the consumers like myself, and we all have to be the ones to deal with it. So it's just, to me, it's just unfortunate, and I really hope there's other ways you could work around this issue instead of just raising the fare hike. So that's how I feel about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Councilmember Sylvina Brooks Powers, followed by Councilmember Gail Brewer, both over Zoom.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so good evening again. My name is Sylvina Brooks Powers. I am the council member representing District 31, which includes parts of Southeast Queens and the eastern end of the Rockaway Peninsula. I also chair the City Council's Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. My community has been historically underserved by public transit, which is part of why I emphasize the crucial importance of equity in every conversation I lead at the council. I believe deeply in the affordable transportation as a public good and in the right for every single New Yorker to access it. It is with equity in mind that I express my concern over the proposed fare increase for subways, local buses, and paratransit. This will not impact all New Yorkers equally. For some residents, the additional charge will not register, but it will strain the wallets of others, especially low-income New Yorkers and in out-of-borough communities like mine. I note that the council is fighting hard to ensure this year's budget includes an expansion of the city's fair fares program to ensure more residents in need can ride at a reduced rate. I also want to express my support for the expansion of City Ticket. So many New Yorkers, particularly in the outer boroughs where subway access is often lacking, rely on commuter rail to get where they need to go. I appreciate the MTA's efforts to extend the City Ticket program to Far Rockaway, though the MTA should work to make City Ticket accessible for rail trips both ways, to and from the Far Rockaway branch. Finally, expanding City Ticket should not mean doing away with the Atlantic Ticket. The Atlantic Ticket pilot program has been a lifeline for working class New Yorkers in transit poor areas of Southeast Queens and Brooklyn. And both the weekly purchase option and the free subway and bus transfer are what make it workable.
Please conclude your remarks.
In these transit deserts, if the Atlantic Ticket is eliminated, the price of a peak hour commute out of Southeast Queens could nearly double. Rather than eliminating the free transfer, we should extend this necessary option to all users of City Ticket. This will allow New Yorkers to fully utilize MTA's vast transit network at a more reasonable rate. All New Yorkers deserve reliable, high-quality transit options at rates everyone can afford. And following a budget in which the state made record investments in the MTA operations,
Please
I
conclude your
encourage
remarks.
this board to prioritize equity as you consider the changes proposed today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Councilmember Gail Brewer, followed by David Feliciano.
Hi, it's Gail Brewer. Thank you very much for the time. I represent the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Subway ridership in my district is still at 76.7% of what it was before the pandemic. And we know, thanks to the MTA, it is safer, it is more frequent, and it is more reliable. to encourage ridership, but we still need more support. The 4% hike on the base fare is higher than I'd like to see, but lower than it was initially thought due to additional funding for the MTA in the state budget and the governor. Increases to weekly and monthly unlimited ride Metro cards are modest. Service is expanding and revenues from congestion pricing will fund capital improvements such as greater accessibility for subway stations, although I know I voted for congestion pricing twice, but we need to have a lot of input. Because 60th Street, the demarcation line is in my district, and there's a lot of concern from residents and businesses. Fare discounts and deals reduce the burden of hikes and incentivize ridership. Most important is the Fair Fares program. In the City Council, we have been pushing Mayor Adams to expand Fair Fares eligibility from 100% of the federal poverty rate to 200%. The change would expand the number of city residents eligible for the program to 1.7 million, up from 932,000 who currently qualify, according to the CSS. There are many more low-income individuals with limited resources who rely on public transit and are now eligible for the program. I also support changing the fare cap on a rolling 7-day period rather than the current fixed Monday through Sunday period. I would like to see a monthly Omni fare cap as well. As an Omni user, I totally support this program. However, as a frequent bus rider, there are many instances in which the reader for Omni is not functioning. So I ride for free. The MTA is losing money and needs to fix the Omni technology. I support a peak city ticket for railroad customers to travel within New York City on weekends, as well as making it available to Far Rockaway riders. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be David Feliciano, followed by Sabil Manai.
Wait, 1 second. Good evening. Mic's not on. Hi. Hi. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you. I'm from Claremont, the Bronx. As you may not know, the fares and up tolls are still going less than price and per day. Like I'm not just I'm not just paying fares. I'm always paying fare with multiple times and every time. Every time, like during the month and every decades and every couple years, we've seen tolls are going up and then go down, then crossing the bridge and tunnel, the same thing in the same way there. But here's a reason why that I'm looking at the key performance. It looks like most of the customers, monthly survey, like going up in Clarendon and the ridership buses and still in paratransit, they're going up and taking. It's not just going to events, be going back and forth and coming home and wasting your time on timeline. But the thing is, what about safety security? And I'm seeing all this, negativity, incident reports that felonies, incident customers, and train conductors, and train operators get assaulted, and this is like unacceptable. We can't continue this. Listen, I'm not here for you guys. Listen, I'm not here for guys. I'm asking these Democrats, all these governor and mayor, you guys late from Buffalo, and we can't continue this. And first of all, we can't continue to live on a train or a bus like that. We need to continue to give them provide services, have a good life, and send them places like home and housing. That's it. That's my conclusion. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Sabil Manai, followed by Ariel W. on Zoom.
Good evening. My name is Sabil Manai, and I'm a student at the New York City College of Technology studying applied chemistry. Thank you to the board for this opportunity to allow me to speak out against the proposed fare hikes and to tell my story as well. I strongly oppose the fare hikes and implore each and every member of the board to reject this proposal that would further the financial burden of students. I urge you to instead support the expansion of the Fair Fares program and encourage all New Yorkers that will encourage all New Yorkers and students and increase the usage of mass transit. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, and I have been utilizing New York City Transit for as long as I can remember. I use the trans daily to go to school and to go to work. I also use it to see my friends and my family. I rely on the subway every day to take me from point A to point B. I reside in South Brooklyn, and to get to school, I have to take the R train. And to get to work, I need to take the N train, then I need to take the D train. My livelihood depends on the train, and so do other students, and so do millions of New Yorkers. I would also like to add that I got to this very hearing using the train, and I will get home later today using the train as well. A price hike now is going to affect other students and the millions of New Yorkers who take the train every single day. The majority of CUNY students do not live on campus, and therefore it requires them to commute every single day. I chose to attend the CUNY school to stay in New York City, to stay in New York City and learn in the city that has taught me everything that I know. As a student, it will be difficult, combined with the financial challenges of college and the tuition price increases.
Please
I urge you
conclude your
to
remarks.
reconsider. I urge you to reconsider for the livelihoods that depend on mass transit and to take into consideration the students who are the future of this city. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Ariel W. over Zoom, followed by Vittorio Bugatti over Zoom.
Hello, my name is Ariel, and I am a resident of New York City. New York City is in a unique role to be a leader in the areas of sustainability and creating systems to combat historic inequality. Further, we are in a unique space to receive a large windfall of cash from the federal government and individual drivers in the form of congestion pricing. Let's align our actions to the words of our community leaders. Any effort in conflict of making MTA subway and buses free for all New York City residents is an idea that brings more negative consequences than good and does not entice people, nor does it entice people to return to the office. Rather than spending valuable budget funds on reduced fare, complex marketing promotions, and enforcement of evasion, I propose we waive all subway and bus charges to all New York City residents. In terms of cost cutting, I am curious about the volume of work being given to select MTA staff in certain stations based on my current run-in with a key retrieval. A 15-minute task was unnecessarily turned into a 60-minute game by a bored MTA associate who was being babysat by a shadow associate. After an hour, I was asked to purchase cigarettes for said MTA associate. If there truly is a shortfall of funds after congestion fare cash and labor reorganization, I propose a special tax be added to private jets and all helicopters flying into and out of the greater tri-state area to combat any remaining shortfall of the MTA. And potentially receive funds from the hotel occupancy tax. No one needs to fly privately into or out of New York City, but many people rely on mass public transit. In conclusion, I propose we finally walk the walk about caring about equity and climate change. Any effort in conflict of making subway and buses free for all New York City residents is the wrong direction, as our main priority should be to create free public transit.
Please conclude your remarks.
For all New York City residents.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Vittorio Bugatti, followed by Miriam Greenfield.
Good evening. I'm Vittorio Bugatti, leader and founder of the Express Bus Advocacy Group. Myself and a large majority of the members in my advocacy group are vehemently opposed to this fare hike for the following reasons. Number one, The MTA has been unable to get its fiscal house in order and has lost over $1 billion from fare beating over the last several years. You can't expect us, the taxpayers and your riders, to continue to pay for such gross incompetence and negligence. You need to develop a tangible plan to mitigate what has become a financial albatross to the public authority. Roughly 40% of the fares go towards your operational budget. Fare beating must be addressed in an expeditious manner. 2, you have asked for and received more funding from the state and the city recently, and will receive funding from congestion pricing. But because of debt obligations, riders will likely not see any service improvements. That is inexcusable. Express bus commuters in the outer boroughs have long asked for more frequent service and an increase to the span of service, neither of which you have been able to do regularly since the city has reopened. And number 3, you are still unable to consistently meet your own express bus schedules because you still have not hired enough bus operators, which means commuters in the outer boroughs and subway deserts see daily service cancellations and longer waits. We refuse to pay more for less. When are you going to hire enough bus operators to meet your schedules? This has been going on for the last, since COVID. And you still have all of these cancellations on a regular basis. And we should not be paying more for less. That is what's been going on for a long time now, and it is inexcusable. So you need to get your fare beating situation under control, which you've been talking about for years at all of these board meetings, some of which I have attended. I am tired of hearing about it. Come up with a plan and fix this mess.
Please conclude your remarks.
That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Miriam Greenfield, followed by Arnell Halper over Zoom. Our next speaker will be Arnell Halper, followed by James Giagiello.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Yes. Fare evasion it's like almost everybody going on the trains is like jumping the turnstiles. It has become absolutely ridiculous in reference to the fare evasion. And I think the crime on the subway could be being stopped by stopping the fare evasion. Today I was on the Long Island Railroad. I saw 5 police officers standing in an overhead thing, doing absolutely nothing, standing together. They have to be either in singles or doubles, but they got to be out there. There's got to be addressing the fare evasion, because that's where the problem starts. Once you stop the people that are getting on the subways for free, problems will be a lot simpler. There should be no reason why homeless people are on the New York City subways. At the end of the line, the subway should be cleared of all passengers on the New York City subway. It's unacceptable that people do not want to ride the subways because of the homeless that are on the subway. It's not a situation that should be continued. Scooters should not be allowed to be blocking. This goes on the Long Island Railroad, and I was assaulted on the Long Island Railroad about a month ago by somebody who had a scooter on the subway on the Long Island Railroad, who felt that his scooter should block 4 seats. There should be enforcement on the Long Island Railroad of people who block seats. People should not be able to use multiple seats, have their feet on the seats, their bags on the seats. Parking restrictions maybe should be handled sort of like what they have in Cambridge, maybe making it so people would take more public transportation for non-residents, that there only be restricted parking in the New York City area to New York City people. That way we get people who are not legally insuring their cars in New York State to be in New York State. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be James Giagiello, followed by Frederick Monderson.
Yes, and I agree with the with the last speaker who just said that they need more enforcement on fare evasion. There have also been instances where I've seen station booths unmanned, and that also leads to fare evasion, and that also leads to could lead to other crimes as well. So if you put people in the station booths, that will help stop the fare evading. That will also help stop the crime in our subway. Also, some other issues I want to point out about the inequity of the bus shelters. I recently wrote a letter to some local Queens newspapers about this, and while riders on the Q12 and Q15 routes, they have to stand while waiting for their buses, especially in the area of Roosevelt Avenue from around Bound Street to Sanford Avenue, while riders on neighboring routes like those on Northern Boulevard and Main Street, they have the comfort of the bus shelters where they can sit down while they're waiting for the buses, and that's not right. We have a lot of elderly, handicapped, and disabled people who can use the bus shelters, and they need to be able to sit down while they're waiting for the bus. It's not right. And another thing, and when the trains get into their last stops, sometimes the conductors do not allow enough time for everyone to get off the train before taking a train out of service. That's at the end of the train's day. And I've been caught on the 7 train several times trying to get off while they're doing this, and it's not right. They gotta give passengers, especially people like handicapped and disabled people, more time to get off the train before shutting the doors down. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Frederick Monderson, followed by Karen Hamilton over Zoom.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Frederick Monderson. I speak in the name of the Society of Old Brooklynites. I am the newly elected president. We are about safety and security and about uniting the city of Brooklyn with the city of New York. I recognize that you people do a yeoman's job, but there are hiccups along the way. I remember back in '68, I was riding the trains for 20 cents, and I think that it's a big stretch to increase the fare today at 15. Why don't you take 5 and do some chipping at the top of the salary scale? I served the city of Brooklyn for more than 100 years. I was chairman of Transportation and Community Board 8 for 22 years. In a number of ways, I've been helping you guys do your job without getting any kind of recognition. I was a part of the struggle to save the Franklin Avenue shuttle. I wrote about 8 articles for the Daily Challenge. I worked with Helmut Lessall for the reconstruction of Eastern Parkway and the Franklin Avenue shuttle garden. I fought for the elevator at Brooklyn Museum along the 2, 3, 4, and 5 line. I fought for handicap accessibility on buses. The rails at Eastern Parkway at Utica for those streams of people who come out so that they would have some measure of security in the streets. I worked with Helmut Lessall, and we had intended, well, I was chairman of Transportation Board 8, we intended to name the Park Place subway stop on the Franklin Avenue shuttle for Helmut Lessall. His wife is here today. And,
Please conclude your remarks.
I want to thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Karen Hamilton over Zoom, followed by Mikhail Castillo over Zoom. Karen Hamilton, you are our next speaker. Please make sure that your microphone and camera are enabled, and make sure that once your screen updates, you can begin your remarks. Okay, our next speaker will be Mikhail Castillo.
Okay, hi. Good evening. I'm Mikel Castillo. I am a student at Pace University, and I am also a resident of West Harlem, New York. I strongly oppose to this fare increase for a lot of reasons, but the main ones have to do with how our city is treating with infrastructure lately. Just yesterday, I heard that the L train got derailed around in one of those boroughs, and it's an alarming sign of how, like, people who are in the government system are being neglected in terms of how they treat the transit system. And if they're going to increase the fare, then they should, like, speed up those like trains, like those waiting times for those trains, because, like, especially on overnight hours where, like, people are going out having fun at night. And if we're gonna, like, keep increasing our rates and then have our trains, like, having our waiting times for our trains for a longer period of time, then we would, like, not like, we will lose our trust in the transit system. And also, the more we increase our fare rates for our trains and buses, the more you gotta trigger people who are, like, fare beating and all that stuff. So why not just hold on for the fare increases for a moment, instead of just, like, or ask the people around them on a survey, just to make sure that whether or not people could accept those fare increases, man. And to end it up, like, allowing people to have fare increases for trains and buses is like allowing Nick Castellanos to hit deep left field at Citi Field. So again, I highly oppose to those fare increases, and that's all I have to say. Thank you. Have a great tomorrow, and go Yankees.
Thank you for your remarks. Let's go Mets for the record. Our next speaker will be Karen Hamilton.
Hello, my name is Karen Hamilton, a Southeast Queens resident and lifelong transit rider. I'm speaking on behalf of the New York City Transit Riders Council. We recognize the efforts of Governor Hochul and the state legislature in preventing a 5.5% increase. And we realize this 4% increase is happening in a post-COVID environment with inflation, reduced peak ridership, and different commuting patterns. And we understand increases can present a financial hardship to riders. We also understand that planned incremental increases are needed for the financial health of transit and continuity of services. And so there will be an increase in fare costs. Riders will also see increases in midday, evening, and weekend services on lines with off-peak growth. And attracting riders with safe, frequent, and reliable service is important to the system's recovery. Improvements funded with congesting pricing revenue will help ensure those goals. And riders need to see transit as a good value financially. We advocate more creative and flexible fare offerings to encourage ridership. We support the proposed Omni rolling 7-day weekly fare capping over the current fixed schedule and introduction of a monthly fare capping pilot. We support the lower proposed increase of $1 to the weekly Metro card. We support rolling Atlantic Ticket into City Ticket as long as the option to purchase a weekly ticket with included transfers to subway and buses remains. The weekly ticket is vital to commuters underserved by the subway. We support raising eligibility to fair fares to 200% of the federal poverty level and expanding fair fare discounts to New York City commuter rail stops. We support increasing outreach and simplifying the application. We support the continued efforts to make the subway and commuter rail stations ADA accessible. Thank you for the opportunity to comment and considering the views expressed.
Thank you for your remarks. We will be taking a brief break after this next speaker. It will be Tahani Gunaratna over Zoom.
Hello, good evening. My name is Tahani Gunaratna. I'm a resident of Howard Beach, Queens, who uses the subway daily. But more importantly, like many other outer borough residents, I rely on the express bus daily to get to and from my job in Manhattan. And now, over the past couple of months, I've been attending some meetings held by the MTA where they've graciously, just like today, accepted input and opinions from riders. But those discussions have been around proposed service changes, reductions, and route changes. Now, those we opposed, considering the fact that the service now even is very intermittent, as Mr. Vittorio Bugatti, the express bus advocate leader, mentioned before. But to have this discussion about reducing service and route changes in tandem to only increasing the prices simply doesn't make sense to me. Many of these people, like myself, live in a transit desert, whether it's Howard Beach or other areas of Southeast Queens or the Far Rockaway, for example, and we have no choice but to take the express bus and pay this price of $6.75 that we're already paying each way in order to not have a 2+ hour commute. So these proposed service reductions and route changes in tandem with fare increases simply doesn't make sense to me. And I urge you to reconsider on either one side of those. I understand and appreciate your efforts to manage your budget and manage your ridership, but I think is really unfair to riders who are traveling from so far to only make our commutes longer and more expensive at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. We will be taking a 5-minute break. The time is 7:09. When we return, our next speakers will be Burton Strauss, followed by Jessica Spezio. your seats. Good evening. We will resume the public comment session. Our next speaker will be Burton Strauss over Zoom, followed by Jessica Spezio in the room.
My name is Bert Strauss. I'm a regular rider, and I'm speaking as Vice Chairman of the New York City Transit Riders Council. We appreciate the important actions that Governor Hochul and the state legislature took to stabilize the MTA's finances and ensure that the fare increase is lower than it otherwise would have been. We thank them for recognizing transit as the essential service it is. No one likes a fare hike, but the late Richard Ravitch showed us that smaller planned increases are critical to keeping the system in good financial health and maintaining and improving service. Funding in the budget even allows for more service on some more heavily traveled lines. Getting riders back on board is a key to our ongoing recovery, and safe, frequent, affordable, and reliable service is important to attracting people to transit. Improvement funded with congestion pricing money will make for smoother rides. Adding more creative and flexible fare offerings will further encourage ridership. We support the proposed change to Omni weekly fare capping to a rolling 7-day period over the current fixed schedule, along with the introduction of a monthly fare capping pilot. We support the lower $1 increase to the weekly that is most used by lower income riders. We support rolling Atlantic Ticket into City Ticket, but the newly expanded City Ticket must include the option to purchase a weekly ticket that allows transfer to and from subways and buses. Removing the weekly takes away opportunity from people who need it most. We support raising eligibility for fares to 200% of the federal poverty level and expanding fare discounts to commuter rail within New York City. Thank you for the opportunity to comment and for considering our input.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Jessica Spezio, followed by Maria Poroj.
Good evening. I'm Jessica Spezio, speaking on behalf of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA PCAC. Who wants to pay more? But riders are the ones to suffer when transit doesn't get the money it needs. Dick Ravitch taught us that, and we were honored to have him speak at a PCAC meeting where he talked about the importance of funding the system. Thanks to Governor Hochul and the state legislature, we'll see a lower fare hike and subway service increases. Express bus reliability remains a problem for riders, with ongoing cancellations during rush hours. We hope this can be addressed with additional fare revenue. Overall, more creative and flexible fare offerings will encourage ridership. We appreciate that City Ticket is being expanded to include peak travel and support rolling Atlantic Ticket into it, but urge you to keep the weekly ticket option that allows transfers to and from subways and buses and adding it to e-tix so more people can take advantage of it. We support changing the Omni weekly fare capping to a rolling 7-day period, along with the introduction of monthly fare capping. We support raising eligibility to fair fares to 200% of the federal poverty level and expanding it to commuter rail within New York City with increased city funding. We support capping the cost of monthly ticket fares for commuters living the farthest from New York City at $500. A 4.5% increase on weekly and monthly tickets would still come out at a lower cost than pre-pandemic because of the 10% discount implemented last year. We support capping any ticket increase greater than 6% at a maximum of 50 cents per trip. We support the MTA's effort to find savings from efficiencies and in fighting payment evasion. Safe, frequent, affordable, and reliable service is important to attracting people to transit. Improvements funded with congestion pricing money will make for a smoother ride. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Maria Paroge, followed by Matthew Bushies over Zoom. Maria Paroge is our next speaker. We will return to her later on. Our next speaker will be Matthew Bushies over Zoom, followed by Carl Pereira.
Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Randall. Good evening, everyone. Well, I'm here to express my opposition with the toll increases for the MTA. I'm just curious who's the one that imposes the toll rate, because last Thursday I was at a Port Authority meeting asking the same thing. It is ridiculous that, people have to pay like $2.75, especially for low-income communities. Where should I? In Maryland, when Larry Hogan was governor, he took the tolls down. Well, at the same time, the MTA should be doing it as well. And for example, if I was the governor of New York, whether I was a Democrat or Republican, I would veto the fare hikes as a result. Hopefully you will be reconsidering it on the toll fare increases, to reconsider that, and the fare, especially for disabled people like me who has autism. Thank you for considering, and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Carl Pereira, followed by Andrea Graham over Zoom.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. This is Carl Pereira, member of Passengers United. At this hearing, I would like to suggest that under the Omni fare collecting system, that the MTA incorporated daily fare cap of $5.80 per day for all subways and local buses, which would equate to 2 local fares per day. For reduced fare passengers, such as seniors and the disabled, this would then be 50% of the $5.80 amount, which would be a $2.90 daily fare cap for those reduced fare riders under this proposal. This additional amendment under the Omni fare collecting system would ensure that no regular rider would pay more than 2 regular local fares per day, and no reduced fare rider would pay more than 2 reduced fares per day. A daily fare cap would also indirectly provide unlimited rides on all subways and local buses for the entire day after a rider pays 2 daily local fares. A daily fare cap could also be incorporated within the rolling 7-day fare capping program, with no negative effects on that separate cap. We at Passengers United believe that a daily fare cap under the Omni system makes sense for New York City residents, and some other cities have already included a daily fare cap within their Omni fare collecting system, such as Los Angeles, California. Thank you very much. Thank you, and have a nice day.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Andrea Graham over Zoom, followed by C. Wilkinson over Zoom.
Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. Okay. My name is Andrea Graham, and I live in Co-op City in the Bronx. I oppose the fare hikes. I will say, I believe before raising any fares, the MTA needs to clean up its act, get its costs under control, reduce the overtime fraud and fare evasion before trying to make up for the shortfalls in its budget on the backs of the transit riding public. I think the Omni cards should not cost $5 and they should be a monthly option. The reason I oppose these fare hikes is one, the number 6 train, which every single day has issues. There are always delays. I transferred to work in Westchester because of this train. The BXM7 express bus is so unreliable. It's always missing buses. They're always late, and there are no explanations, and there is no one to call. The fare on that bus should be reduced to $5. My poor daughter has had to take Uber and Lyft to be able to get to work on time because of that bus. And finally, I'd like to see the Metro North running to Co-op City. Unfortunately, the way the MTA works, I probably won't live to see it. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be C. Wilkinson over Zoom, followed by Lisa Daglian.
Good evening. I'm just I'm trying to get my little speech here. I'm sorry, where is it? Good evening. It is inevitable MTA fares will increase. However, MTA fares should impact everyone, which would include all MTA employees, MTA retirees, MTA board members, New York City Transit employees, etc. No one group of employees or persons should be excluded from the impact of MTA fare increases. Every morning when I take the Brooklyn bus to the train, besides seeing the continuous fare evaders, MTA New York City Transit employees, retirees are continuously observed not paying their fair share of MTA fares. All other employees, retirees are required to pay MTA fares to go to their jobs, except MTA and New York City Transit Authority employees. Make them to pay to go to work, just like every other employee using buses and trains. Additionally, New York State, New York City, and the federal government should be conducting independent external audits of all MTA books to ensure monies allocated on a consistent basis to fill MTA's stopgaps are spent for the improvement of MTA services for customers. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Lisa Daglian, followed by Garland Roberts.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lisa Daglian. I'm the Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA. Tonight, I'm speaking on behalf of Rich Cottagio, who lives in Orange County, is a member of our Metro North Railroad Commuter Council, and is a regular rider on the Port Jervis line. This is Rich. While we generally support the small regular increases on Metro North over larger, less frequent increases, we can't support dissimilar treatment for west of Hudson riders who have subpar service compared to east of Hudson Metro North lines. West of Hudson riders do not have a one-seat ride into the city and need to transfer at Secaucus. These proposed fare changes would lead to a greater increase for many west of Hudson riders, a fare that simply would not be fair in exchange for less service and midday service gaps. Currently, there are 68 Hudson Line trains running from Tarrytown to Grand Central every day, but on the Pascack Valley line from the similarly distanced Spring Valley to Penn Station, only 18. There are 33 daily Hudson Line trains between Poughkeepsie to Grand Central, but only 13 Port Jervis Line trains. For years, the fares on the Port Jervis and Pascack Valley trains were more or less comparable to the fares for similar distances on the Hudson Line, even with less service. But in February 2022, east of Hudson Metro North riders and LARR riders got a 10% discount on monthly tickets as part of the numerous fare pilot programs. That discount was not extended to west of Hudson riders. This year's proposed fare hikes use the 10% discounted monthly rate to calculate increases for east of Hudson Metro North riders and Long Island Railroad riders, but the regular higher rate for west of Hudson riders. This is an example of need for parity for fare costs across all of Metro North. We ask you to look into the concerns raised by County Executive Ed Day about increases up to 7% on some west of Hudson lines that already get less service. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Garland Roberts, followed by Natasha Elder over Zoom.
My name is Garland Roberts, retired engineer, former Assistant Secretary of Defense under George Herbert Walker Bush, and one of the men that saved the Lem Project. I've been an activist also with Leroy Callender, that was the bridge man when we used to parlay under the bridges on wiring and everything else to check bridges and stuff. All the way back to Mayor Lindsay and even fighting with Abe Beam when he wasn't doing the proper repairs and everything else. I'm totally disgusted because I did win one Friday where they found that I was right about them messing over the seniors and others that have disability cards that get the temporary situations, because you can't put a monthly or a weekly on those, only value, and these people would lose all that money and be crying in front of me at 161st Street where they got their replacement cards. Also, as a person that had been involved with a lot of the human factors engineering, I've sent things in to you about the situation on your buses with the having to put a limit on the size of different carts. The people that are designing the buses are not dealing with the situation that they came with a stroller, and I don't know what kind of stroller they got. They must be mini midgets. But my main thing is that there was a commitment last Friday that we will definitely deal with the people that are being hurt and also messed up at the B35 bus, especially at Simpson Avenue, that are falling. You made all these changes without somebody like the guy from England that went and actually changed. There were supposed to be people calling in from businesses in that area that only have 50% business since we have to return the Simpson bus situation and also deal with B15 and many other situations that I will turn in something in writing as well.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Natasha Elder, followed by Paul Hoffman, both over Zoom.
Hi, good evening. My name is Natasha Elder, and I'm the Regional Director for NIPERG with the Shop Hangers campaign. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. We urge the board to reject the proposed fare hike and support expansion of fares to include all college students and New Yorkers at 200% of the federal poverty level. For many years, the MTA has been overly reliant on fares from riders. The drop in ridership during and after the pandemic devastated and decimated our mass transit system. Even today, the system is not back to pre-pandemic levels of ridership, and a fare hike may very well disencourage riders from returning to the system and should be the MTA's last resort, not among the first. It honestly should not be on the table at all. A fare hike will exacerbate affordability challenges for New Yorkers and the affordability challenges for New Yorkers as inflation continues to drive up the cost of living. A recent study by United Way shows 50% of working age households do not even earn enough to cover their basic needs, such as housing, food, and transportation. Riders, including the college students that we work with, contribute to the city's economy and culture and deserve mass transit that works for them. Affording transportation to get to and from class can be the difference between earning a degree or dropping out of school altogether. We need ways to make transportation equitable and affordable, and fair fares have the capacity to do just that. When comparing the MTA's revenue sources with other similar urban transit systems in the country, we see that the MTA's pre-pandemic fare burden is much higher. The other systems treat mass transit systems much more as an essential service with higher subsidies from dedicated non-volatile taxes like sales tax. The MTA should call for additional municipal and state funding, reduce reliance on volatile funding schemes, and implement other budgeting solutions such as getting a handle on the system's alarming debt burdens. Again, we urge the board to reject the proposed fare hike and to support expansion of fair fares and to all college students and New Yorkers at 200% of the poverty level. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Paul Hoffman, followed by Constance Lesold.
Hello, my name is Paul Hoffman, and I'm a resident of Brooklyn, New York, and speaking out against the proposed fare hikes. The transit death spiral is a phenomenon in which a transit agency experiencing a funding crisis raises its fares, which leads to lower ridership, which leads to a funding crisis. That in turn leads to service cuts, which leads to lower ridership, which leads to a funding crisis. This leads to increased fares, and I'm sure you can see the cycle. If any of this sounds familiar to New Yorkers reliant on the city's public transit system, that's because the MTA has been in a death spiral for at least the last 6 years. We've seen fare hikes and service cuts, which has created a transit system that is expensive and unattractive to use. This gets to the MTA's actual problem. They do not have a funding crisis, they have a ridership crisis. The MTA is focused on revenues from peak hour riders, which is unsustainable in the post-pandemic work-from-home world. The most successful and sustainable transit systems are not those in which people use it out of necessity, but by choice. Agencies in which riders travel not just for work, but to go a few neighborhoods away for lunch rather than a few blocks, grab dinner across town rather than order delivery, or go to a distant park on the weekend will have a resilient and reliable ridership base, which in turn leads to more consistent revenue. Anyone who's ever traveled by bus or subway during off-peak hours knows it can be a nightmare. Service is incredibly infrequent and is often truncated without viable alternatives. The service the MTA provides is unattractive for the moderate rider, and should the MTA raise its fares, they will further alienate these choice riders. As an alternative, these full fare riders will turn and are already turning to e-bikes and e-scooters. For roughly the cost of a year's travel on the subway, an e-bike can provide transportation across the city as fast as the subway can with far greater reliability. That is an attractive use of money. $2.75 where a 12-minute wait for a train that's going to be delayed is not. $2.90, well, they don't call it the death spiral for nothing. The MTA needs to address its ridership crisis by making service more attractive. A fare hike is only going to exacerbate your problems.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker is Constance Lesold, followed by Yuki Endo.
My name is Constance Lesold, and I'm representing the Eastern Parkway Coalition today, which has been pretty silent for many years, and thanks to these hearings is coming back to life. I have helping me Elizabeth Espera from Bay Ridge, formerly from the Philippines, and Skip Roseborough from Bed-Stuy. They're all in Brooklyn. What the MTA and the TA, you are the arteries and the veins of the city of New York. You reach out to everywhere, and you've got to connect everywhere. If you leave anybody out, it doesn't work. And if you leave out a whole lot of poor people, it's going to work even less. Right now, on the edge of Crown Heights, where the Eastern Parkway Coalition is, and Bed-Stuy, you have the Atlantic Avenue Men's Shelter, where there appear to be like thousands of immigrants with no MTA cards to go anywhere. This situation cannot continue. People have to be able to get out. They have to be able to, if nothing else, go to the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens, where they can go for free if they know to ask for a community pass. Right now, we're asking for restoration of the B71 between Park Slope and Crown Heights, going all the way from the waterfront to Weeksville. We got to connect our neighborhoods. They have to talk to each other. They have to live with each other. There's not enough east-west transportation. Thank you very much. And we also want the bus back that goes across the Brooklyn Bridge so
Please
that we
conclude
can
your
get
remarks.
to the hearings and to City Council, which you
Thank you for your
cannot.
remarks. Our next speaker will be Yuki Endo, followed by Jacqueline Cruz over Zoom.
Hi, everyone. How you doing? My name is Nick Fasano. I'm an MTA employee, and I'm going to be reading the following on behalf of Yuki Endo, who's standing to my right. He's a resident of Jackson Heights and Passengers United. I oppose the fare increase on MTA service because Nassau County Bus, Westchester County B-Line Bus, and Roosevelt Island Tramway will also have to join the fare increases as well. The fare increase will affect many low-income areas who depend on the MTA subways and buses, Nice Bus, B-Line buses, and the Roosevelt Island Tramway. It's also because of fare increases that some people are fare beating and they can't afford to pay. Also, express buses should remain $6.75 and work with Westchester County DOT to lower B-Line BX M4C, White Plains Midtown Express from $7.50 to $6.75, so BX M4C passengers can be able to use the 7-day Express Bus Plus Metro card. If the fare increase happens, the MTA should also work with Port Authority of New York and New Jersey PATH trains so that they will accept the MTA's unlimited Metro card since they're the same price. If people using regular Metro cards, they'll get the free transfer between the MTA service and the PATH within 2 hours. This will make commuting easier for those who travel between New York City and Jersey City/Newark. I do not support the 15% increase on Long Island Railroad Metro North because the Long Island Railroad mainline weekend shutdowns has no shuttle buses. I also do not support the toll increases because many people depend on cars too. Please also save the Long Island Railroad Atlantic ticket. If Atlantic ticket cannot be saved, please combine it with the $5 all-day city ticket with Metro North, Long Island Railroad, so that they have free transfers to MTA subways and buses, Nice buses, and B-Line local buses. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next, apologies. We have exhausted the list of registered speakers in the room. If you believe you are registered for today or tonight's hearing, but have not heard your name called, please speak to a member of the staff in the room to indicate that you are here. We will now go back to the Zoom room where Jacqueline Cruz will be our next speaker, followed by Jeremy Kaplan.
Okay. Hello, panel. I'm sure you've heard it all, and I'm not sure if it has made any difference, but my comments are for the other speakers, actually. If you're upset with the fare hike, imagine how drivers are feeling. They don't even use the system, and yet they're going to be charged, and it is okay with everyone. But the issue isn't the drivers or the riders. The problem is the MTA. If you look at the breakdown of where the money received by the MTA is spent, you'll see that over 75% of all they raise is spent on salaries. Yet, every time we turn around, they are proposing new projects. How? With whose money? But you see, if they propose more projects, then they can always say they need more money and turn to us or the government or the city, and around we go. Me, I get one paycheck. I get one paycheck. And with that, I have to do everything from feeding my family, clothing my family, housing, which is going up, doctor's visits, school expenses, vacations, everything, all with one paycheck. How? Where is all the extra money supposed to come from? Again, one paycheck. 3.5% increase in rent, 4% increase the MTA is proposing, food is up. Where does it stop? The MTA, on the other hand, they don't worry because they can always turn to us for more money, and it is allowed to happen. They just say they need to fund the new project, and then they turn to us. Honestly, there is no way that New York City is going to get out from under the MTA if this is allowed to continue. Since the hikes are already going to happen, the drivers are going to be punished in the name of the MTA. I propose no more projects. I would like to see a list of all the projects currently underway by the MTA. Those projects should be on a big billboard in Times Square, and aside for an emergency, no more new projects are to be proposed or started until those are taken care of. That way, the MTA cannot say that they need more money, because the money raised should go specifically to finish those projects.
Please conclude your remarks.
After the projects are completed, we can move on to other projects. By the way, this is what budgeting is.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Jeremy Kaplan, followed by Gary Young.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yes, hi, I'm Jeremy Kaplan. I'm a parent in Sunset Park, and I'm highly against the fare hikes. I was disappointed to hear that there was even going to be a 15-cent fare hike. I think, as some of the other people have mentioned, we need to make sure that we're actually accommodating the new types of ridership that we're having, and we need to not have a fare hike because we need to promote ridership as much as possible. And I think the biggest thing, as a number of people have mentioned, is we need to actually encourage people who aren't commuting all the time to be using buses and the subway. And I think part of that is disincentive of increasing the fares again, and that the fares are too high. And I'm disappointed to see that Albany actually didn't do as much to tax people to actually keep the fares and fully fund it. Because I think the free bus program that they promoted is a great idea. I think that's going to encourage a lot more people. And I think as a parent as well, one of the most important things is making buses more accessible with children and with strollers. I see the pilot program to allow more strollers on buses to make them more accessible. I think that will bring a lot more people onto buses that don't usually take buses. But I think it's unconscionable right now to be raising it. And I know that later on we'll be talking about a $3 fare, and then 2-3 years from now, $3.25. That's too much. So we need to be talking about Albany taxing the rich on this and raising it, because ridership already does pay a fair amount of it compared to other major metropolitan cities. So I think right now the burden really shouldn't be on ridership. It needs to be on the wealthy who aren't paying their fair share in taxes. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker, Our next speaker will be Kazi Sazid in person. And then, we will go to Gary Young over Zoom, followed by Kazi Sadid.
You guys hear me?
Yep.
Hi, good evening, MTA board members. I would just like to start by saying that I am sick and tired of the constant delays and service slowdowns on the Queens Boulevard line. But service has been really inconsistent for decades now. 12-minute service on weekends is just not cutting it for that line. Ridership is very heavy, and we deserve more service there. Next, for the record, I support the overall lower increase for Easy Pass or a higher increase for cash fares. We should be incentivizing people to switch to the more efficient way of paying via Easy Pass. For the subway and rail increases, let me make clear, I do not support the fare increase, but I understand that it's a necessity. MTA do have a budget, understand. Why should honest New Yorkers pay the fare when others take it for free? You see it in every single station, every single bus routes along every single borough. The paying ridership, which includes seniors and low-income riders, we all pay fares. We also pay taxes. Why should we pay double when we pay taxes and the fares? And now you're increasing the fares, so we have to pay twice. To conclude, we need more Eagle teams on local buses. We need more undercover police stations. We need to end this entitlement of not enforcing the fares. I have read the Blue Ribbon report, but I don't know when we're going to start enforcing it. This year, next year, maybe never. In 2019, you also said we're going to enforce the fares, but it's been 3 years now, and we don't know what happened to that. The fare invasion cost agencies $690 million. We wouldn't need a fare increase.
Please conclude your remarks.
Thank you for listening to my remarks. Thanks.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Kazi Sazid.
Okay. First, I'd like to commend the MTA for expanding city tickets, even though I think there are more opportunities, especially with Omni. If the MTA wants to increase the fares, they need to give us better service. First, including improving the signaling system that fails constantly, even with CBTC on the Queens Boulevard lines. Tackling the homeless EDP situation that harass, assault, and kill innocent commuters, as well as force commuters to potentially take extra legal actions. But I want to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the chronic mismanagement of the MTA of its finances. From consultants over-engineering stations on 2nd Avenue to contractors messing up work like the Culver Avenue CBT, or agencies like the LIRR having various financial bloat due to poor worker supervision, as well as outdated overtime rules. The MTA has been apathetic towards tackling the mismanagement of its agencies. Some solutions I think the MTA should do is renegotiating its labor deals, implementing a proof of payment system, which can save between $70 million to $240 million. And there's very much more. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Celso Garcia over Zoom, followed by our final speaker of this evening, Charlton D'Souza, also over Zoom.
Hello, everyone. Just wanted to, ask a few questions as opposed to just give me a speech. I want to know if why is it so hard to retain employees and keep people on board in the most important jobs at the MTA? Are the employees being treated correctly? Isn't it more productive to help the employees by having better enforcement? Can the numbers be released publicly, how the fare is being enforced? And why is the panel for fare evasion needed. That was just extra money being spent that could have been spent elsewhere because people already knew that fare evasion was going on. Why the sub presentations being presented at each meeting the same, as opposed to being different for different meetings, so we can give us more information? Also, will you ride the buses and trains and let your family ride the buses or trains anywhere in the system, in the Bronx, Brooklyn, high crime areas, in all boroughs, in all areas? Okay, is quality of life in the subways good and in the buses? Do customers avoid the trains, especially during off-peak or nights? Is crime in the subways really down? Is there really a fiscal cliff, or is it a manufactured crisis? Is service adequate for 24/7 service? Is ridership up, or people are not paying, and the people that are not paying are not being captured?
Please conclude your remarks.
And can unnecessary technology programs be delayed?
Thank you for your remarks. We have one additional speaker who identified themselves in the Zoom room. Our next speaker will be Charlton D'Souza, followed by our final speaker for this evening, CN. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, so can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so my name is Charlton D'Souza. I'm the president of Passengers United, and we are outraged that, Long Island Railroad commuters who travel from East Long Island, they're paying the same fare as Grand Central and Penn Station customers, but they're getting substandard service. And they're getting a shuttle train where they have to wait 20 minutes for a shuttle train during middays and nights. And during rush hour, the problem with the shuttle trains is they miss their main connection. So if you go to Port Jefferson, now you have to wait another hour or so. And this has gotten ridiculous. And I've been back and forth with the MTA on this. They're not listening to us. But I do want to say one thing. With the Atlantic ticket, we need the weekly pass program, which I'm holding right here in my hands. This is the $60 unlimited Atlantic ticket. And this is the gateway that, opens up equity and speedy service to Southeast Queens commuters. This needs to be extended to Grand Central and Penn Station and at all hours. And in terms of having a $7 peak fare for city ticket, you don't need that. Just make it $5. And the off-peak fare should be $3.75. City ticket was always supposed to be $1 up above the regular subway price. That's how long I've been coming to these meetings. I know about city ticket. But in terms of the crime, people evading the fare, employees being assaulted, it's ridiculous. Now, in terms of fair fares, of course we support fair fares. And, I want to thank the board member, David Jones, because he was the one who got fair fares implemented. And he worked very hard, he and his organization, to get that going. So David Jones, big shout out to you. And unfortunately, there's other people trying to say they created the program. They didn't create it. It was David Jones.
Please conclude your remarks.
We support it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your remarks. Our final speaker for this evening will be CN.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak today at today's meeting. I'm very concerned about the proposed raise to the copay on the eHealth on demand program for Access Ride passengers. $5 each trip instead of $2.75 is very high and concerning, especially when there's already going to be a cap on how much the MTA will pay for the rides, so that anything, for example, over, I believe, $40 is up to the passenger to pay if they're on the e-hail on demand program where they don't use the service so much. If there's someone who uses it a lot, the cap is $25. So I'm very concerned about this because there's many people on SSI who unfortunately do not work due to their disability, their chronic disability, and I'm worried about how they're going to be able to get around this fine city of ours to events in the city, to cultural events, to other events for people with disabilities and things like that. So I hope that the board members might be able to think about maybe dropping this plan for a $5 copay on the e-hail on demand program. I'm also concerned about the rationing of rides and also this cap. I feel like this is going to isolate people in their own borough. People won't be able to go from borough to borough. For example, if someone's in Queens and they need to go to Manhattan for different activities or maybe a medical appointment or something like that, they're going to have an issue if they can't afford the rest of the cab
conclude your
fare.
remarks.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful for the e-hail on demand program. I just would like you guys to know that it's really helped.
Before I turn it back over to Danny to close up shop for tonight, I just wanted our board to know that we have over 220 comments that were also received from the public by way of the other means that we made available, the public hearing hotline, the online comment portal, written mail, et cetera. We'll work to summarize those comments and get the whole transcripts from all the hearings that we just held over the last couple of days, as well as written comments that were received, and the board will receive those in the coming days. So thank you, everyone, for your participation. I also want to thank the staff that put these hearings on. Very happy with the programming. Back over to you, Danny.
Thank you, Will. And thank you all for joining us this evening. The time is currently 8:03, and this concludes our meeting. Please visit the MTA's Fair Hearing website, new.mta.info/2023-fair-hearings. As a final reminder, in addition to the hybrid public meetings, there were other ways to provide comments, as Will mentioned before, including sending a letter to MTA Government and Community Relations regarding the fair hearings at 2 Broadway, 17th floor, New York, 10004, or the public hearing hotline at 646-252-6777. Telephone agents are available from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. Thank you very much. That concludes our meeting.